For years, the plan in Washington sounded simple. Retire the B-1B Lancer and B-2 Spirit in the early 2030s, bring in the B-21 Raider, and glide into a future of clean, stealthy, easier-to-maintain bombers. On presentations, it was elegant. On a planet that's heating up geopolitically from Europe to the Indo-Pacific, it turned out to be fantasy. The US Air Force has quietly admitted that reality. Instead of rushing the old bombers to the boneyard, it is preparing to spend nearly $1.7 billion over the next 5 years just to keep the B-1B and B-2 flying. Roughly $342 million will go into extending the life of the Lancer. About $1.35 billion will flow into sustaining and modernizing the Spirit. That money isn't nostalgia. It's a blunt statement. The US cannot afford a gap in long-range strike while the B-21 ramps up. To understand why, you have to look at what these jets actually do. Let's start with the B-2 Spirit, because that's where the Air Force's checkbook is pointing. If the B-1 is defined by payload, the B-2 is defined by access. It is the only operational stealth bomber on Earth that can penetrate dense, modern air defenses, drop either conventional or nuclear weapons on hardened, high-value targets, and get out without dragging a huge support package behind it. Its flying wing shape, buried engines, and careful shaping mean radars see almost nothing until it's too late. The Spirit carries about 4,000 pounds of weapons entirely inside its bay. It can be a mix of JDAMs, GPS-guided bunker busters, conventional gravity bombs, and uniquely, the 30,000-pound GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator for buried commander bunkers and nuclear infrastructure. On the nuclear side, it's certified for B-61 and B-83 gravity bombs, making it the airborne stealth leg of America's nuclear triad. Only around 19 B-2s are operational. That tiny fleet, plus the cost of keeping their stealth coatings, hangars, and mission systems perfect, explains why the Air Force is pouring over $1 billion into them. If you lose even a handful before the B-21 arrives in numbers, you create a hole in your strike optionals that nothing else can fill. The B-1B Lancer sits on the other side of the ledger. Less about access, more about volume. Born in the Cold War as a high-speed nuclear penetrator, resurrected and redesigned as a purely conventional bomber, the B-1B has turned into high-endurance artillery for the jet age. It's about 44.5 meters long, carries 4 big afterburning turbofans, and uses variable sweep wings to trade lift and drag depending on speed and altitude. It can just nudge past Mach 1 at altitude, but the Lancer's true weapon is its payload. About 75,000 pounds of ordnance, the largest of any US bomber. Those 3 weapons bays let a single B-1 carry a ridiculous mix. JDAMs, JASSM cruise missiles, long-range anti-ship weapons, laser-guided bombs, cluster munitions, dumb iron bombs, often all in the same sortie. Over Afghanistan and Iraq, that meant one aircraft could orbit for hours, answer calls from multiple ground units, reposition hundreds of miles, and still have weapons left. Crews describe it as airborne artillery for a reason. The downside is age and visibility. Decades of hard combat flying have beaten up the airframes. Structural fatigue, complex hydraulics, variable geometry wings, and big engines all drive maintenance hours up and availability down. And unlike the B-2, it's not stealthy in the modern sense. Against layered, high-end air defenses, it has to stand off and lob weapons from range, not punch into the heart of the umbrella. Put those pieces together, and you see why the Air Force isn't willing to simply walk them to the graveyard while waiting for the B-21. The bomber force is small, roughly 44 B-1Bs, about 19 B-2s, and a larger but elderly fleet of B-52s. Every single jet matters. At the same time, demand is climbing. Bombers are no longer Cold War break glass in case of World War III assets. They're constantly deployed, signaling in the Baltic and Arctic, flying bomber task force missions over Europe and the Pacific, loitering over the Middle East, reinforcing extended deterrence messages to allies. Bombers have something fighters and even theater missiles can't match. They can launch from the continental United States, fly intercontinental missions with tanker support, carry huge payloads, and recover back home without relying on vulnerable forward bases. In a world where adversaries can hit airfields with ballistic and cruise missiles, that matters more every year. That's where the B-21 Raider fits in. It's the future, a stealth bomber designed to be more maintainable, more numerous, more networked than the B-2, with better survivability and lower operating cost. The Air Force wants at least 100 B-21s, dwarfing the tiny B-2 fleet. The first operational aircraft are expected to appear at Ellsworth Air Force Base around 2027, with follow-on basing at Whitman and elsewhere. But first aircraft is not full fleet. Training, weapons certification, squadron stand-up, and infrastructure all take time. You cannot swap out a bomber fleet like you swap phones. That's where the B-1B and B-2 become bridge platforms. The Air Force isn't keeping them because they're easy or cheap. It's keeping them because walking away now would create a strike gap that adversaries could exploit. Recent operations underline the point. In large multi-axis strike packages, you often see all three legacy bombers working together. The B-52 stands off and launches cruise missiles. The B-1 brings volume, dozens of precision weapons on many targets. The B-2 threads through the highest threat rings to drop a handful of bombs on the hardest, most protected nodes, leadership bunkers, nuclear facilities, command centers. That layering is exactly what you need when the target set ranges from mobile launchers to deep underground complexes. The B-2's reported use against Iranian nuclear infrastructure and other hardened facilities is a warning shot. Critical assets are going underground, under mountains, under meters of reinforced concrete. Standoff weapons can do a lot, but not everything. Sometimes you still need a stealthy aircraft to drag a 30,000-pound penetrator directly over the aim points. The B-1B and B-2 were supposed to be on the glide slope to retirement. Instead, they've turned into the indispensable middle chapter between the Cold War bomber force and the B-21 era.